Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Wolf. I am the founder and the director of the Southeastern Summer Theater Institute and Groundplan. We're here tonight to speak to you about the technical theater college admissions process. For those of you unfamiliar with SSTI, for the last 18 summers, we've been running a professional musical theater and technical theater training program for high school students who come from all over the world to beautiful Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. 10 years ago, we started our SSTI Tech program, which at that time was the first of its kind that was really preparing young technicians to transition from the high school environment where they've been working some very different levels of experiences and get ready to enter college and then to do this as a career. And over the last decade, we've mentored hundreds of technical theater students as they embark upon this journey. We've just created Groundplan as the newest division of SSTI's programs, and it is an online prep program and coaching service that helps prepare high school students, whether they've been involved with SSTI before or if they're brand new to the SSTI family. It helps prepare them for this journey into college and into their professional careers. So we're going to give a little bit of an overlay on the technical theater admissions process tonight. I'm going to be joined by my co-host and co-founder in this endeavor, Madison Frazier, in just a few moments. And then we'll see an alumni parent who's very active still to this day in the mentorship of current parents in the technical theater admissions journey. And then one of our own students who is thriving right now at Penn State University. And we're going to hear from them both shortly. But first, without further ado, let me bring in Madison Frazier into the room. There's Madison Frazier. Quick intro from myself, at least from Madison, that I'll give is Madison has been involved with SSTI since SSTI Tech began. Quite frankly, she was a student at SSTI. She trained, she learned both at SSTI and at her home there in Florida, and then she went to CCM where she got her degree in their TDP department there at CCM. And she's been a staff member at SSTI every summer for the last 4 years and helped create a lot of this content that we're going to be discussing this evening. Madison, welcome to the screen here, I guess I should say.
Thank you.
So tonight we're going to start our discussion and our intro talking about the three different types of programs. We're well aware that many families who are embarking upon, whether it be musical theater or technical theater, and you may hear me make that delineation a few times this evening. But over the years, there have been lots of coaches and lots of folks have evolved to help musical theater students kind of go on what to many parents feel like uncharted territory. For the technical side, it's taken some catching up to do. Oftentimes, our tech parents are just completely bewildered by what they're getting into and don't have many resources outside of this wonderful group that Maria helped establish that we'll talk about in a little while. So we're going to kind of start at the base level here of what types of programs a student, be it a current senior or be it a rising freshman, needs to be thinking about as they're angling their trajectory towards a career in college and beyond. There's three different degree types, and I'm going to share my screen here and get our little presentation going. You should be able to see it there on the screen. Awesome. We're going to go into, I'm going to change one thing here. That view. Oh, it fits so much better on the screen there. It's all about the branding, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Madison, why don't you start us off here and let's talk a little bit about the different types of programs.
Yeah, so the three main kinds of degrees that you can get when going to college for technical theater as an undergrad are a bachelor's degree, a Bachelor of Fine Arts and Conservatory BFA. And there's pros and cons for each of them, but there's really no wrong choice. It won't majorly impact your career. It's more of what your educational needs and goals are in this moment.
Yeah, and as we're going through this, I want to pause something I should have said a little bit earlier is if you have comments, no matter whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, if you're watching on those platforms, put comments in the chat and I should be able to see them on the screen. And when we do questions later on, I'll circle back and get to your questions so that you don't have to try to remember them. If you're streaming on Instagram, I don't think it shows the comments on this service. So if you've got a burning question that doesn't get answered, hop on over to our YouTube for SSTI or our Facebook to answer those questions. Madison, sorry for that interruption. I'll let you continue on here. We're going to talk about the first of those programs, which is the BA.
So the Bachelor of Arts it's the most flexible of the degree types. And generally when you're applying to a BA, you just apply to the college and then you get to choose your major like you would with most other majors that you might go to an undergrad for. We'll talk about BFAs, but generally for BFA, you have to apply both for the college and for the program and get into both of those with some different application materials. BAs work a lot more similar to other undergraduate programs. It's a smaller percentage of credit hours that you spend within your major. And often, like it's a BA in theater or theater arts or technical theater, there's a little bit less specialization. On average, there's exceptions to that. But it offers you like a more broad educational opportunity. It's really, really great if you want to do a double major or if you want to do minors, if you're interested in multiple departments within technical theater, or even doing, like technical theater and directing or technical theater and performance. It gives you a lot of opportunity to kind of pick and choose what you want to learn, especially if you're not quite ready to commit to say, and I just want to do lighting for the rest of my life. Like if you're not quite at that point right now, that's really okay. And a BA might be a great opportunity for you.
Yeah, and we're talking about like the focus. We're talking about the weight of your coursework that is going to necessarily be within your degree. So you're not going to take as many classes in the School of Theater in most cases for a BA degree. You're able to have a broader variety of course load. So that when Madison speaks about the specificity, if you were going into a BFA program, which is the next type program that we'll discuss, you're going to have to take more classes in more specific areas. And then the next level, conservatory, it gets even deeper dive and even more zoomed in trajectory. But the next level up in terms of specificity of course load is going to be the BFA or the Bachelor of Fine Arts. Madison, you're a BFA holder, but from a conservatory, but a BFA holder nonetheless. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so BFAs do offer more specialization in general. The rough percentages we generally give is like 50 to 60% of your time in a BA will be in your actual major, closer to 70 or 80% for a BFA. And the balance there is like your number of gen eds, really. And then for conservatory, it's closer to 90% of your time will be spent in a focus area. BFAs in general have more specific degree titles. They'll let you do something like, say, get a BFA in lighting specifically or a BFA in stage management in a way that BA programs don't always accommodate. So there's definitely opportunities to specialize and get a more in-depth knowledge on a specific area that might not be present in a BA program. But the flip side of that is there might be less opportunities to work outside of that. You might have to choose to specialize and not be able to opt into some other areas. Some of your gen eds will probably be related to your BFA in a way that BA programs may or may not do. So you might have an English class that is a drama lit and it checks off both of those boxes. Or you might have a math class that's actually a, carpentry class. My math class in college was a carpentry class. Yeah, so it's a little bit more structured. You get to be a little bit more focused. Yeah, those are the main ideas.
And you will, and as opposed to the BA program where we talked about where you probably just select the major, once you get into the BFA territory, you're definitely looking at some type of artistic review, which involves portfolios and resumes, which we're going to talk about later. But we have one more style of degree program to talk about. That is the BFA conservatory degree. Madison just said a minute ago that 90% of your course load in this type of training is going to be in your very, very specific area. You're not going to have to take a lot of courses that are really gen eds, as one might say. It's for the student who very much knows this is precisely the thing I want to do. And I'm talking as precise as in I want to be a lighting designer or technician. Not I want to do technical theater. It's more zoomed in than that. It's for the student who very much knows this is the thing I'm going to do and want to do forever. And if I decide to teach, I'll go get a master's degree in this thing, right? Madison, as a conservatory student yourself, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So, yes to all that stuff that Ben just said. It's very much all of your time, almost all of your time will be spent within the theater department. Classes revolve often around production practicum, which is, working on shows or shop hours. Most of your projects and classes or your classes are project based, where it's a lot of hands-on stuff very often. And it really, really gives you that deep dive focus into your specific interest. But the flip side of that is it's really structured. It's really hard to do a double major or minor. It's hard to do study abroad if that's something that you're interested in. And it can be a little bit limiting if you're really interested in multiple departments, that not all of those programs accommodate that. If you're interested in that kind of thing, it's definitely something that's good to ask in an interview. But to be aware that probably you'll have to kind of zoom in on a focus. I majored in stage design, which was scenic design, props, and paints kind of rolled into one major. And it was the only one of the degree paths at my school that had multiple focuses within that, but it's kind of all under the same umbrella. And I really spent almost all of my time in the prop shop and in the paint shop, which was really, really great for what I wanted. And that was the path that I wanted. But I never took a lighting or sound class, which is something that I kind of regret sometimes, that I didn't get that, that aspect of that college. Yeah.
Yeah, and as Madison said, she quoted herself early on here, is that there is no wrong choice, just the right choice for you. That's the big thing, that when we're talking with our tech students, our musical theater students, when we're looking at schools, there's all kinds of things when we're coaching our students about what's the right fit. And that doesn't just necessarily even mean degree type. You're talking like quality of life things, like do you like being cold? Or have you never been cold in your life and you regret it? Or does that excite you? Do you want to have a car? Because if you want to have a car, you're probably not going to go to a university in New York City. There's life things that we have to consider as well. Here's a big one, parents are going to be excited to hear me say, is this going to financially put me in such a hole that I'm not going to be able to go do interviews and take maybe a freelance job that doesn't pay very much, but it's really great connections? If you're in $200,000 worth of debt for your college degree, you're not going to be able to take that job that maybe gets you connections and furthers you along in the industry. So these are all the big things to consider, right? What's the right fit for you? There's BA, BFA, conservatory. There is no degree where anyone is going to be like, oh, I was going to hire them, but they had a BA. Nobody cares. It's about the experience that you're going to get when you're there at the university. So we want you to understand the different types of programs, because we don't want you to get into a program that's not what you're seeking or not the perfect fit or the right fit. But there's no decision in that's going to be limiting for you once you get out. You're gonna any program you're going to go to, you're going to get out of that what you put into it. So that's really important to keep in mind. We just want you to make the most informed decision about the different program types, because that's not readily available and put out and dissected into the three different arenas like that. I believe this next slide is even more things that I jumped right ahead, but yeah, these are the things I talked about. Campus dining is a big one. Do you have specific food allergies? Like, you want to be sure that you're going to be able to eat, because you're going to be spending a lot of time on campus. You're going to be living all day and all night sometimes in that theater building. So you want to be sure that it's comfortable and it's a life that you want to live. Talking about the BFA and the BFA conservatory programs, those are going to have an interview process. That's a lot of what we do at Groundplan, honestly, is helping our students prepare an SSTI in the summer, is we're helping them prepare for this interview process. That's where we have found the need for a program like ours, honestly, is that there's not a lot of information about what this is, and it's big and it's scary. And we have technical theater students who don't traditionally love standing up in front of people and talking, who have to suddenly do this thing. Just simply by demystifying it a little bit and explaining it and doing a series of mock interviews, you really can put yourself at ease. It's not the hardest thing in the world. There are materials that you have access to. You just need to know what they look like. There are two basic elements. It's your resume and it's your portfolio. The little bit of time-consuming news about this is that it does take a little while to get the hang of it and build it and make sure it looks right and make sure it's branded. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But the glass half full aspect of that is you're building a resume and portfolio that will be the foundation of the resume and portfolio that you use for the entirety of the rest of your career. So that's not to put a lot of pressure on it. That's to be like, great news. I'm going to have to do this really, really hard work one time, and then I can just tweak and add. And if you want to refine it in 5 years when you get out of college and totally redo it, of course you can. But this is a document that you're going to need for the rest of your career. So the first thing we're going to look at is the resume, which this is an important thing, especially for parents who maybe come from a different field, who are familiar with like CVs. This is a one-page document. This is a one-page document that specifically for colleges is going to summarize your experiences, your education, your special skills, and your references. Up here we have an example that we have made in Canva. Canva is, if you're not familiar, is a software that is becoming very prevalent across many industries, with from social media marketing to document creation. It's a little bit more user-friendly and accessible than perhaps like doing something in Adobe InDesign, and it makes it really easy to cross-collaborate and work on like branding elements. So this is our sample resume here. Madison, let's talk a little bit here, break down exactly what our Ella Trition has on their resume.
Yeah, so theater resumes are definitely a little bit different than resumes for a lot of other industries. Generally, if you're working a job that has like a standard industry definition, like head electrician or run crew, where most people who do theater kind of know the scope of what that job entails, even though every show is different. It's really nice to list shows in a format similar to how LSC Trition does, where there's like, you want the show title, you want someone who was directly in charge of you, whether it's a director or a supervisor. You want the location that you did it and the time, like when it happened. And you want these to be in reverse chronological order. That's one that often gets people, but you want your newest stuff at the top of that list. Special skills are also really important for theater because so often we work in so many different weird niches. Like there might be a show that's like, well, we really need someone who knows how to carve on this show. And if you don't have it listed on your special skills, you might not get the job. It's not quite true for colleges, but it is nice to give colleges a sense of what your education is so far. Small asterisks to that, though. I know sometimes students can become stressed and have a hard time coming up with special skills, especially as high schoolers. Colleges are educational institutions. So if your resume doesn't have this much stuff on it, if your portfolio is not fully filled out, if you can't come up with a bunch of special skills, it's okay. Like that's not going to prevent you from getting into a university. They want to teach you. So I just wanted to put that asterisk there. Both your resume and your portfolio are like your calling cards. They're your hook, they're your grabber. The goal of them is to not put all of the information of everything you've ever done, but it's grabbing people's attention so that you make it to the interview step so that they come and look at your website and make it to the next step. You can put too much information in there and then have people disengage because it's so hard to absorb that they'll just end up getting none of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that is we can highlight here is this individual, LSC Trition, has chosen some very specific branding. That's one of the things we talk about a lot with our students. It's not necessary, but it's not a traditional black and white, my name at center, lighting designer centered underneath that. You just very basic font. Ella has made some design choices which show creativity. I mean, that's what she's applying to be a lighting designer. So like it's helpful that it's not over the top. It's not too kitschy. There's a little bit of branding with the E with a little spark or lightning bolt there. And those would be elements that as we move into talking about the portfolio that Ella could transition and have kind of as a through line of colorization, a through line of branding throughout the portfolio as well. So this is a sample of a resume. Certainly not the only way to ever do it. There are different varieties, but this is one that we have seen that has works pretty well and is pretty clean and immediately lets the reviewer give it a quick glance and know whether or not they want to move this conversation forward. The next thing we're going to talk about is, in fact, a portfolio. We have the portfolio of Carmen Arpender, or C. Carpenter. Fun. And the first thing you're going to notice here when you get a portfolio is oftentimes we see a cover photo. You see that Carmen has chosen some branding that's specific to their look, that may be continuing throughout the portfolio if she so chooses. It's got her name clearly there on the front. It's got a contact number. Sometimes people on a portfolio will use a photograph. I think that's awesome. If you're a lighting designer, or if you're a visual artist of some sort, if you're a scenic painter or something, like a cool angled photo of a texture or something that you painted would be great. The only caveat I give to that is the one thing that I love about Carmen's portfolio cover here is that we can clearly see Carmen's information. We don't want to lose the name and the contact info, most specifically the name, as a result of a flashy photo, right? We don't want this crazy flashy photo and then Carmen Arpenter's hidden in a wood grain texture there towards the bottom, right? Make sure it's clearly visible, and that it establishes some brand presence. You would expect that Carmen would have some of these colors, maybe even this little these little designs here integrated some way within her resume, probably using the same font for her name. It would probably appear just as similarly at the top of her resume as it does there. And then, of course, a portfolio, you move into the inner pages where you're going to get to show your work. So Carmen here, clearly at the top, she's got the production that it was done for. She's got where it was done, and she's got what the item is. Actually, it's reverse order. It is saber-toothed skulls in this production at this high school. And she's got some basic production info here. It probably is like supervisor or designer or director. You don't need full production credits listed over there. And then these shots show her process. It shows 3 photographs, beginning, middle, and end of the work in progress, the work nearly finished, and then the work there on display. We talk to our students a whole lot about the importance of taking process shots, and also realize that it's impossible to go back and take process shots of things that are already done. And that's absolutely understood too. In a moment, I'll talk about a few ways that maybe you can dig into some phone archives and find some process shots that you didn't even know you had. Madison, anything there before I move into our next page here?
I don't think so. It's nice to have a one-ish sentence descriptor under most, if not all, of your photos to kind of explain what's happening, especially if it's a project where multiple people worked on it. Sometimes people don't want to include stuff in their portfolio if they feel like they only did a little bit on it and they feel like they can't take ownership over that work. You absolutely can't. If you contributed to it, you should be proud of that and the skills that you have put into it. But the way to do that is by notating, like if you helped work on a proscenium, in the description, say, helped wire this section of proscenium, and then you can have a full show photo of the finished piece, as long as you indicate that you didn't do the whole thing. But it's really helpful for people who are scrolling through to have a sense of what you have done on them and what your process is. As a props person, it's really fun for me to know what specific materials you used if you are putting props in your resume. It doesn't need to be terribly long, but a little bit of description is really nice to have in your portfolio.
And you notice here on Carmen's photos here, it's not a ton of photos. It's 3 pretty large photos with descriptors that allow some degree of visibility of detail for the reader. Which the other thing that's important about these portfolios is you're often going to be reviewing them with a person in an interview setting. So you're looking for items that are talking points for you. You're kind of setting the tee for yourself to have cool things to talk about, right? So you don't want to put something on a portfolio that is just there just to fill space. I would rather be like here. So you see this is 2 pages from Carmen's portfolio. And so Carmen built this really cool piano that was used in this production of Piano Princess. And we see that Carmen has 4 photos from the earliest stages to the final production shots, which is great if you can have some production shots. I know not every school, every place distributes or even takes production photos, but if you have some great production shots, it's really cool to be able to see the finished product on stage under lighting. And it's maybe an opportunity where you even speak with your directors or designers, like if you have the opportunity during tech to even like be down front and even with your camera phone to take some photos so that you have some shots of it on stage. But this is clearly a signature piece that Carmen is really proud of. You've pretty much only got 12 to 15 pages roughly that you can use in a portfolio. So you don't want to have every product, every project spread over multiple pages. But in this instance, this is clearly something that Carmen had a whole lot of design input, if not a total design charge with this piece. And she kind of led it from beginning to end. So it's a great piece for her to speak about. It is over 2 pages of her portfolio. It's probably going to get asked about in the interview. So it's a great opportunity for you to show something that you're really proud of, which not only shows your knowledge and your skill, but it also shows your passion. Because that's what, specifically with college, they want to see students who get excited about the work, who are really, really pumped about the idea of doing technical theater, because they're bringing you into their home for 4 years. So they want students who are excited about the work and who are passionate and are comfortable just nerding out about all things technical theater. So that's what I think the conversation that Carmen sets herself up for here. We're going to move to this one more page of Carmen's portfolio here. What I like about this, and this is going to lead me into talking a little bit about finding process shots, right? So clearly, Carmen made this rabbit. It was very cool. Structurally, here we made it, and then we have the finished product. We don't have a ton of photos of the rabbit prop here. Maybe that's because Carmen had to make the rabbit very quickly. Maybe that's because Carmen was in a class where the professor didn't let phones be out, whatever the reason might be. Carmen doesn't have a ton of photos of this, but I always suggest to our students, you may have more process shots than you think, and it may be as simple as quite literally, maybe you texted your mom a photo of what you were working on, and you didn't even think that you had that in your camera roll, and you might have a shot that looks just like this. Hey mom, look, I built a rabbit today, and you thought you didn't have a shot of that rabbit. But if you go back into your text thread and look at the attachments, maybe it's in there. Maybe you sent it to someone else. Maybe you posted it on Instagram story or a Snapchat story, and it's in your story archive, and you thought the photo didn't exist, but you actually had done that. So if it's a high quality photo and it's from something like that, you can absolutely still use it. It's as long as if it was on Instagram story and it has like gifts all over it and like a dancing rabbit or something, like I wouldn't say use that. But if it didn't, it's probably and nowadays 2024 phones, it's probably high quality enough for you to download it and put it into your portfolio. Madison, can you talk a little bit about paperwork? Because her last example here, Carmen has paperwork, and I know that paperwork is going to vary based on departments. A stage manager is going to have a lot more than perhaps maybe a scenic painter. But talk a little bit about what kinds of portfolio paperwork is appropriate.
Yeah. One more thought about progress pictures and then going on to paperwork. Yeah. Colleges don't necessarily expect high schoolers to have high quality photos of all of your stuff. They know that that's something that you have to learn to take. It's definitely kind of a pain to get into the habit of taking them all of the time. But what we always tell our students is if the thought ever crosses your mind of, that looks pretty cool, take a picture right there. And then you will never be sad about having the pictures. You will be sad 6 months from now when you can't find any pictures of it and the show has been closed for 5 months. So always, anytime you have that thought, definitely take a picture. Paperwork is a great thing to show. You don't need to put tons and tons of it in your portfolio, especially if you're not a stage manager. But having some of it is really great because it shows your organization. It shows a lot about your process, even if it's not like fully formalized paperwork. It can show a lot about what you do know. It can be a great talking point if you have like thumbnail sketches or like little scribbles that you did about and this is how you communicated visually with someone else in your team. And then it's really great for when you're applying for jobs because professional portfolios and resumes are set up almost identically to these, of being able to say, hey, when you hire me, this is the kind of paperwork you can expect to get for my department. All departments have some kind of paperwork or tracking. So it's definitely really nice to have it on there. You do want to be a little bit careful, especially if you're a stage manager or sound or a department that works really closely with performers, that you don't want to have personal information for performers on your paperwork if you're posting it somewhere or sending it somewhere. So you want to make sure you don't have, like, it's okay to have names on a call list, but you don't want to be like, here's our contact sheet with our whole cast's information, So just like being a little bit aware about the information of other people that you're putting into your portfolio and resume is always good.
Incredible. We're going to now shift over and get ready to meet some of our guests that we have with us on the live stream tonight. I see some of our questions coming in on our screen here. I see Carmela, I see Carrie. I'm gonna hit your questions first as soon as we start the question thing. But if you do have questions, again, they don't show up on the app that we use here for if you post them or if you post comments on IG Live. But if you're on our YouTube, the SSTI YouTube, or if you're on the SSTI Facebook, you can comment there and we'll see your questions. So please hit us with your questions as you've got them. Our first guest that we're going to bring online here is Maria Morrow McGee. Maria is a parent of an alumni of our SSTI program. Her daughter Helena went through SSTI for multiple summers and just recently graduated from Rutgers with a degree, BFA in technical theater and lighting design. Maria is also one of the founders of the world famous Facebook group for parent technicians. She literally saw the one for musical theater and was like, there's nothing here for technical students. So she and some collaborators started it, and we're so very grateful for her support and to have her here tonight. Maria, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I have an initial question for you, and I'm going to throw it up on the screen so everybody knows what I'd ask. But you've had the opportunity to go through this, obviously, with your daughter Helena, and now mentor and help support other parents, which I think is just like the best thing ever. What's probably the most common misconception about this process or misunderstanding that you see from newcomers jumping into this process?
I think it's, you look at it and you dive in, and, most of us probably are coming into this without having a BFA in some kind of technical theater or theater. Personally, my degree is a BA in psychology, so I knew nothing. And, the question is, oh my gosh, does my student have a chance? I don't even know what to expect with this. Don't know how to go about it. How competitive is it? What are we doing here? And I feel like, most of the common questions really fall under that umbrella of, does my student even have a chance? Right? Because, you start looking at the programs and you see that the BFAs take 3 to 5 students per year per specialty. Well, oh my gosh, how many people are applying? Is it 10? Is it 100? How many are vying for those 3 to 5 spots? Maybe your student recently found the passion for technical theater junior year, and they haven't worked on very many productions, or maybe they don't have very many opportunities in high school to work on anything. Maybe that's just not an option for them. They have limited portfolio pieces, like Madison was talking about, taking the pictures as you go. What if you really don't have any? Will that keep them from getting in somewhere? And guess what? The programs know that. They know. I mean, everybody's coming in with a range of experience. Not everybody shows up with a fabulous looking SSTI style portfolio. I wish they would, because it makes it so much easier to have a clue what you're doing. But programs are really looking for students who have a lot of interest and passion and have the ability to discuss their creative process. And that's really the purpose of the portfolio, is to facilitate that discussion. And, also, are you someone they want to work with for 4 years? Hardworking, kind people, are you, they want somebody who's really interested in wanting to learn and be trained, not somebody who is or thinks they are an expert on day one. So yes, your student has a chance. Absolutely. It's intimidating, but you work through it. And I got to tell you, after that first interview, when you get, they come out smiling and they're super excited because it went great, it's all downhill after that. Just great to see that success happen. And oh my gosh, all the pressure's off because I've done one and it went well.
And then you can speak to the flip side of having one who's just graduated, and employment for the prepared student also not a problem. Your child graduated early, straight to employment.
She's doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of drafting the thing is, the skills they learn in technical theater in any area are so transferable out there in the world with either events or, entertainment or anything like that. It's not just all, hiding out in the back of the theater, in the dark till they're 45. They're going to do all kinds of things.
Right. And, every event that you see happening, even I'm thinking election time right now, every one of those election rallies, there's a host of union technicians who are all there working on. I mean, you just more than you can ever imagine. That's a question we get a lot. And I always say our students graduating colleges, they don't have trouble finding ways to get people to give them money for doing the thing that they like to do.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And speaking of those students, we're going to bring in one right now. This young man was a student at SSTI 3 years ago and is now a sophomore at Penn State University, working with several of our faculty members from SSTI are there with him. This is Adam Baer. Adam is a stage management student at Penn State University, a sophomore, and I just discovered when we got on this call has the opportunity to PSM a show as a sophomore at Penn State. He's working on Much Ado About Nothing right now, which is a for those unfamiliar, for larger programs, that's a little on the rare side to have a student who's a sophomore kind of have a production put in their hands. But from our experiences of working with Adam as a high school student, I know that that's certainly something up to the task. Adam, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Ben. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. So you have a unique perspective in that, specifically speaking to our students who are watching this, you've just recently, within the last year and a half or so, come out of this process. And you've arrived at college. Other than Penn State being probably cold, what are some things that you have learned since you've been there that maybe you didn't know, or maybe would have been helpful for like younger Adam who's applying for schools to know? What are some elements that you can pass along?
I mean, I think there are so many things I could say about this question. I think like when you get to college, it's like an influx of so much information all at once. And it's like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. But I think just going throughout that application and admission process, it's important to prioritize what you want out of your college experience. Like when I was going through that process, I would have loved to have sat down and just written out a list of like, here's what I want going throughout college. This is 4 years of my life that I want to be able to enjoy and also do what I love as a stage manager. And I think it's important to prioritize those things. So one of those things for me was I wanted to have a good community. And I think Penn State has that. And I'm lucky to say I have that here. But I encourage you to make that list and then figure out what's on that list that you can maybe give up, or that you are like, I want this thing, because ultimately not every school is going to have, like, you're not going to find that perfect school for you. That's just reality, right? There are only so many schools with these programs. And I think it's important that you recognize that early on, but also understand that there are things on that list that you make that are going to be things that you're not going to want to give up. And that's super important to you. And I think you should be able to stick to your guns on those things and really go after those things and find those things for yourself. So that's the one thing I would have loved to have done earlier on and prioritize throughout my whole admissions process that last year I was in high school.
Yeah. Making that list of non-negotiables, to quote my friend Mark Christine, it's a non-negotiable list of things that you want. As you were just telling me, like you were freezing at a football game yesterday. Like some students, that's a thing that students want to do. They want that community and that sense.
Yes.
On Saturdays do that. We're notoriously as theater folks, not always sports fans, but there's a community spirit to that is really, really fun that you're not going to find at maybe a school if maybe your priority is you want to be in New York City. You're probably not. Well, I guess Columbia has a football team, but no shade. But you're not really going to find that here within New York City. So it's knowing what you want, and I love that you made that list. We're going to take it over now to the comment section, where I think that we have some questions that have popped up here. Carrie's first question, I'm going to throw to Madison. And Carrie's question is, will the specialization of a conservatory make you more marketable or employable?
That's a great question, and one that we get pretty often. I wouldn't say it necessarily makes you more marketable. I went to University of Cincinnati's College Conservatory of Music longest name of any program, but it's one of the top conservatories in the country. I had a really great experience there. No one has asked me about it since I've been a working professional in New York. The most that I've gotten from that in terms of just the title of the university I went to was, oh, cool. And like, that's an edge case. And like, I've had people be like, oh, I didn't even know they had theater. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. It really doesn't come up that often, which I think is probably a good thing. You know, people come from all kinds of different backgrounds and all kinds of different paths to working professionally in the entertainment industry. And I do think it really is about the experience that you get there. Does the school have the kind of classes you're really interested in learning? Does it have connections? That's one thing that conservatories have that other programs may not have. Although there are lots of BA and BFA non-conservatory programs that have connections, but like, are the professors working in the industry? Do they help students get jobs in the industry? Do they do conferences every year for hiring? Do they help students do summer stocks? Like that kind of stuff, I think is more important than the actual title of the university that you go to.
And I'll add in, Madison, a flip side to maybe perhaps discuss to focus into that is, as far as someone who often employs people from some of the schools, perhaps if you do go to a conservatory and you have the hyper focus of scenic paints, your portfolio may perhaps look more experienced than perhaps someone who's getting a more broad education. Like I know that when I get a student who maybe applies from a CCM and is in maybe lighting, I know that they've worked with a lot of the heavy duty equipment that we have and a lot of that experience. So you see some of that reflected. But yeah, I echo everything Madison says there. Carrie also asked here, would you include academic grades on a resume? I would not go as far as, you might want to put your GPA if you're getting ready for like college stuff, but we don't need like a breakdown of courses or anything like that. Would you agree, Madison?
Yeah, I would say check the requirements of each individual university on their application materials. BA programs generally don't need a resume. BFAs do, and some of them say specifically to have a GPA included. I would not include a GPA if you're using this resume to apply for a professional job. Professional jobs don't care. And the colleges should get your grades separately. But under like the education section of your resume, you can list like by your graduation timeline, this is what your GPA is. Yes.
Incredible. I'm going to throw a question double over here. I'll start, Adam, if you want to jump on this one with me. As someone who's done this, what was your advice for preparing for portfolio reviews from Jessica?
Well, I'll first say that my experience at STI was a great way to prepare. And really from that was doing those mock interviews with literally everyone. I did it with my parents. I did it with people at STI. I did it with my sister. I did it with my technical director and director that I really trusted at my school. I had like monthly meetings with them. Every month I would come back with a new portfolio and a new changes, and I would ask them their opinions on things. And so that's my biggest advice. I also would say, I guess from like a logistical point, but I also would say that if you think you're going to struggle with just like the anxiety of it, right? Just like going into that room and having to present yourself, which can be scary. And I was there, I've been there. I think that just trying to be yourself as much as possible is something I would really highly encourage. I think they want to see you, and they're gonna want to admit the person you are. And so if you're trying to put on this facade of something you're not, I would it's actually easier to do the interview when you're yourself. Like you're just able to talk and you're able to make jokes and you're able to just make conversation a lot easier. And I think they're able to see who you are. And so that's something that I would encourage, is just try and be yourself as much as possible. I know it's hard. I've been there. I know as technical theater students, we love to be backstage for a reason. That's why we're backstage. But I think being yourself is super important, and they want to see who you are.
And Adam, you hit upon something I say a lot. And I often give the caveat of I say this, but I always say, this sounds like a tagline. It sounds disingenuous, but our students get into almost every school they apply for. And it's not because they're the absolute best in the nation. It is because of just what Adam said. We do mock interviews, and it's so important that they've done that scary thing before they go to do it for the real time. That's the real difference maker. It's not, I don't think it's some magical magical secret sauce that we have going here. It's just we're putting them through this process and this experience so that then when they get to do the real thing, they've had a dress rehearsal already. It's not completely unknown. So Adam, it sounds like you took that to another level, which I highly recommend and love, that you went to your tech director, you went to your parents, tell them, pretend like you don't know me and you're interviewing me for a job. And you just practice that over and over and over again so that it's not scary. It's the same thing an actor. An actor gets nervous before an audition, but if they have 5 auditions in a day at Unifieds, they're much less nervous by the 5th one than they were at the very first one. So that's a key to this process. We're getting more questions here, so I'm going to keep on rolling. Carmela asked, jumped on over for Instagram. Thank you for following the instructions. Carmela asked, if you're working professionally with other theater companies, but also do things with your high school, what would be the highest priority? That's a really important question because you do start to run out of space on that resume really, really quickly. Madison, talk a little bit about, if you will, the prioritization of types of jobs, theater companies, that type of thing, as how Carmela might approach that.
Yeah, there's a few different ways that you can break it down, and it depends a little bit on what your specific shows are and what your specific goals are. Some people like to break it down into having a professional work and an educational work section on their resume, where you can list those things and it makes it really clear that you're doing professional work in high school, which is really, really awesome. But the flip side of that is it can also sometimes imply that the quality of work at your educational institution is not the same as professional theater, which isn't always accurate. Like sometimes high school theater has a higher production value than community theater or professional theater. It just really depends on where it is. So that's kind of what I would say for that, is either just depending on how many shows you have of them and how it feels important to break it down. For both of them, you'd be listing where you did the shows. So it can, like, if someone's reading through it, they'll see if one says high school at the end and one of it says, regional theater at the end, but they'll be able to tell. And you do generally want every section of your resume to be in reverse chronological order, but your portfolio should be in the order of what you want to show the most. You want to put your most attention grabbing, coolest thing at the front, no matter where it came from. But having like a piece from a professional theater in there is a great way for when you're presenting your portfolio to be like, and I did this professionally over here, like building yourself those talking points and making a point to bring them up in the interview when you're talking through it, I think can't be more important than the way you specifically break it down. That's a little bit of a roundabout answer of it depends. I apologize.
It's all good. It's great stuff. We're going to throw Stephanie's question over to Maria. Maria, you've had the ability to watch interviews, the process of that go from there was no information 7 or 8 years ago to now there's some unified things with Pittsburgh. There's even some technical representation in Unifieds. So that's to Stephanie's question here. Is what's the best place to find the interviews for each school? There's a Unifieds for performance and callbacks, but what is there for technical theater? We were just talking about this before we hopped on the call here live. So Maria, do you want to tell us a little bit about those opportunities?
Sure. So some colleges will have representatives from the technical side there at Unified. So if your student has, passed their pre-screen and they're invited to interview, if there is a pre-screen, sometimes there's not, and you sign up for, a date in Chicago, there's an opportunity there to interview. The walk-in piece that you see with the musical theater performance side is not so frequent. Usually you're scheduling with the university that you've applied to and they have invited you to interview. The drawback to those, and we hit that with the one that we did when my daughter was applying, is, the person who showed up was a scenic design person, actually she was a costume person, not lighting. And so, the questions that got asked, there really wasn't a lot of understanding about what my daughter was trying to present in the interview. So it just wasn't, it may not be the specialty area that your student is. However, recently there is a new opportunity called Pittsburgh Unified Auditions that some moms in the musical theater parents group Facebook group created, and it was very important to the lead person in that to include technical students in that, tech theater students. So they have a virtual interview opportunity that just happened a couple of weeks ago. And the students upload their portfolio information to get accepted. They had about 25, 27 schools with tech theater programs. They did a consortium style presentation virtually on a weekend, and then the schools reach out individually to the students afterward. And I suspect that it's not too late to actually upload if you have a senior right now and they're interested in doing that. The fee is very low. I think it's mainly the cost of get accepted, which you have anyway, right? You'd have to get that. So that's an awesome opportunity because it's in early October or mid-October, and it's kind of before all the main interviews start, the on-campus or different locations, and it's a great opportunity to connect with some terrific schools that your student might not have on your list, and even juniors can do it and get some practice, head start practice.
Yeah, that's great. And the one thing we always tell students about the Unifieds, Pittsburgh's Unified sounds a little more user friendly, is that there's not a Mark Christine, again, to quote my friend, says there's not a 1-800-Unifieds number that you're going to call. If you're going to interview at Unifieds or the Musical Theater Kids audition, you go through the regular process on their website of the applying, and you just choose that location as your interview site date. So you won't register like you're registering for like a conference or like a thespian con or something like that. You're just going through the regular process, but you're choosing Unifieds as your interview site for that purpose. Great questions coming in here. I'm going to try to be sure that we hit everyone's. This is a great question here. What is there a big difference in the vibes of an in-person versus an online interview? I'll start, then I'm going to hop it over to Madison because I know Madison has, as a current working technician, also has thoughts on this. Almost every interview I do now, I hire about 30 technicians every summer who work in some capacity for me, or 30 staff members who work in some capacity for me. And I used to go to job hire conferences, and post-COVID, I do them all over Zoom, and I start them in January, and we do them on our own schedule. That's pretty much become the way of the world for most hiring and most or some college interviews. Some of them you're obviously going to go do on-campus weekends. We highly encourage that. But a lot of this experience for technicians has become just what we're doing right here, right now, and that is the online Zoom style interview. It does present slightly different vibes, but I will say for technicians, and as the recipient of those vibes, as someone who's often talking to people, I'm able to get a really good idea of who they are as an artist because I have their visual portfolio in front of me. And quite frankly, oftentimes it's better for me as the interviewer because I will be able to zoom in and look. Whereas if we were at a conference, they might have a tablet that they're holding up in front of my face or a laptop, and I'm trying to see the battery's dying and it's getting down. Like I have all of that right in front of me, and I can go back and reference it. And it's kind of like a place where I don't feel like I lose anything interviewing a technician over Zoom. Musical theater, I kind of like to see an actor perform and be in the room with them. So I don't think it's a little bit different. I get very similar vibes in person versus not. Madison, anything you want to throw in there? I know you do interviews all the time for your professional work online.
Since COVID, Zoom is definitely the industry standard for professional interviews. I have not done a single in-person interview since I graduated college, and I've been working professionally in New York for 2 or 3 years now. All of my interviews are online. The biggest thing that I would say for doing in-person interviews when you're looking for a college is that you can, vibe check the university, which is really nice to be there, get a sense of the space, maybe get a tour of the shop spaces in the theater so you can see it with your eyes and see if it feels like somewhere that's going to be good for you to be. When I was on campus for my interview for University of Cincinnati, I immediately fell in love with the campus. It had like this beautiful brick drive up that you came through, and we walked in the front door and there were people sword fighting in the auditorium for a sword fighting class. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be here for 4 years. And there's a few other universities that I went to that I thought were really high on my list, and I got there and I was like, actually, this seems not quite right. It doesn't feel quite right. I know it's not possible for everyone to travel to all of the universities on your list. And I think that you can definitely make an informed decision about the university you go to without doing that. But I would recommend, even if you don't interview online, if you have an opportunity to go to like your top 3 schools and just kind of get a sense and see if it's somewhere that you feel like you're going to be happy for the next 4 years.
And don't hesitate. I always add this in, and I once again compare our musical theater friends to our technical theater friends. Don't hesitate to reach out to a professor with a professional email. Student, reach out. Parent, don't reach out. Student, reach out with a professional email. Introduce yourself. If you want to include your work, your artistic materials, by all means. But say you're interested in coming to view the campus, or I'm coming this week. I would love to have the opportunity to stop by and see the space. Most times, the technical theater department will go out of their way to make sure they either meet with you or they set up a student to meet with you. It's much more personal of a touch and kind of a recruitment kind of element for technical theater versus musical theater, where they literally have 3,000 people coming at them for 10 spaces every year, and they've just learned to kind of put their guard up. The technical faculty is a little more approachable, and it's a little easier to get some one-on-one FaceTime for them to get to know you and you to get to know them. It's a two-way street. So I definitely encourage students to reach out to professors when you go to visit. And if you can, I know this is hard, don't plan your visits on the weekends or the holidays, because they're probably not going to be there. We get that a lot. Like, I'm here for President's Day weekend. I'm like, you know who's not there? The students or the professors. But you can still see the campus, but we want you to see inside the spaces too. Let's jump into our next question here. Sharon asked a question about, to what extent is a production technical interest versus a design interest better served by joining the union versus getting a degree? I think this may be hinting at jumping right into career versus getting a degree. We've certainly seen people in our student body and our professional colleague life take both routes. Madison, I know one of the things that we always tell folks is, there's one of the things that does happen that every student isn't ready for, is to just quite simply jump into life at 18, 19 years old and foregoing college. That's an important thing. Also, for our friends who are on Instagram, I think it just timed us out. We hit our hour mark there. I should have given them a warning. I was watching the clock, then I started talking. But oftentimes that's a big factor. Like, Adam was talking about, there are life things that are important, but there are also life things that you maybe need to experience that college affords you that opportunity. Madison, do you want to just hit on just the to join the union or not to join the union broadly topic real quick?
Yeah, and that's, a huge topic that we could do a multi-hour discussion about, the pros and cons of the union. The union generally I'm a big fan of, but it can be really hard to just join, especially depending on what local you are or like where in the country you are. Like for me, living in New York City, to join the union, I would have to make $35,000 a year for 3 years consecutively in doing non-union contracts in union houses to qualify to join. That's a pretty high bar of entry. However, I make a good living not in the union, and so do lots of people. I do want to join the union eventually. I'm just not quite at that point yet. But working professionally, going right into working professionally, especially if your student already has connections or is working locally, can definitely be a valid choice. But I would also, take a hard look at, does that feel like that's going to feel good? Like Ben was saying, there's a lot of opportunity to grow and develop as a person in a university setting. There's people who are there to nurture and support you. There's opportunities to discover new interests in ways that you might not get those by just joining the professional world. Yeah.
We've got a question here specifically thrown to Adam. Adam, do you spend most of your days with other theater majors at Penn State, or are you in gen eds with math, science, business majors, things like that? Can you talk a little bit about the course load structure for you?
Yeah, sure. So I would say the majority of my days are spent in the theater building. I think that definitely racks up when you also add production credits to that. So we do a production a semester in the stage management office. Some other areas like sound, I know, does more than just one production. just in different roles throughout the semester. And so you spend a lot of time at theater building and in the School of Theater, which I think is great if that's what you're passionate about. I would say right now, I'll just give you an example. Right now, I have 2 classes that are general education classes, and then I have 4 classes that are theater classes. That's a general layout of what it looks like for me. So I think that's what I spend most of my time with people in the theater industry, in the theater building, and I love it there. But I knew when I applied to college that it was important that I had other supplemental classes outside of theater, which is why I didn't go the conservatory track. To be honest with you, it's what I want. I wanted to have that. I'm a better stage manager when I have those opportunities outside of the theater industry, and so I knew that going into college, I wanted a place where I had those, but also had a lot of theater. And that's what I have here.
Incredible. Thank you. Here's a question from Carrie. Maria, you've seen a lot of this too, and I think we will agree. You mentioned the opportunity to interview as a junior. What can it hurt, right? I believe that's what you were saying there moments ago. It's if you have the opportunity to do a practice round, a lot of these conferences, Pittsburgh Unifieds, did you mention that they are one that allows for that juniors to come and kind of do a mock interview?
They do. And it's a great opportunity to connect with some programs. And, this year I heard from one of the leaders of it that, several schools invited students who are currently juniors to come and, shadow backstage and visit, some local places where they live near, which is really cool as a junior to have that connection. So, that may or may not be their school next year, but to just have that experience and that connection, is a great start.
Yeah. And you never know.
And they know they're talking with a junior, right? They're not talking with somebody who's graduating in 6 months and, they're ready to go. So they know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And thank you for that question. Timothy has a question that we sometimes get. So at larger programs where the admissions are competitive, you're thinking the bigger schools that he's mentioning Penn State, Illinois. We get this a lot with Michigan. These really stringent admission standards. Do the admissions teams weigh the portfolio and resumes more than other criteria used for admissions? I'll start this, and then anybody can add on that they would like to tag onto this. Is our focus here at Groundplan specifically is on helping guide students through the more unknown, dare I say, territory, and that's the artistic admissions side of things. So we're careful not to speak as academic counselors and guidance counselors that have it at the school that are very careful to know all of those P's and Q's about exactly what each school might need academically. I will say that some schools have the ability to perhaps put the School of Theater might be able to put a thumb on the scale a little bit for a student that's right. And then you're going to have some schools, the example I always give is like University of Michigan, which academic standards are so rigid. If you don't have the grades, there's not enough thumbs for them to put on the scale to help with that. Adam, I saw you nodding your head. Maria, you as well. Is there anything we want to add on to that in terms of your experience?
I can just say that I like to think the admissions counselors here at Penn State know, or in and around, I think when I was applying as well, they know that when you're in production and when you're doing productions in high school, especially stuff, and it may be in regional theater as well, you take time out of your day to do that kind of stuff, and your grades may suffer because of it, but you're getting academic enrichment elsewhere. And I think that's important to recognize. And it's important, and I think definitely here at Penn State, the School of Theater faculty know that you're taking time out of your day to be in a theater for, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, which you love doing, but it's going to take time away from your grades and academics. And so I think I wouldn't worry too much about it, is what I'll say.
Yeah. And just make sure, your application list does need to be, no one is going to be so wonderful at costumes and wigs and makeup that they're going to be able to get over a giant discrepancy in the school's required SAT, ACT scores. It's not, we're not dealing with a 5-star quarterback thing, here where it's like, you're not going to have that level of pull. So make sure you've got a range of schools. You want your safeties, you want your mid-range, and then you want your reaches academically, and then also probably artistically as well. But the prepared student is going to do well in this process on the artistic side of things, for sure. Maria, did you have anything to tack on to that?
I was just going to add, some schools, the qualifications are the bar's a little bit lower, like Carnegie Mellon, for example. You're not competing against, the computer science kids and the engineering student, applicants, you're competing against other theater students. And, so the bar's a little bit lower. And then Michigan, one thing they do that I really appreciated, their academic screen is part of the pre-screen process. So you submit your portfolio, and if you get invited to interview, you've already passed the academic bar for the School of Music and Music, Theater, and Dance. So you're okay if you're showing up there for interview day. You're cool. You're set.
Yeah.
So that was huge.
That is huge. That's great. I mean, and it also, you don't want to be like, you don't want to receive false hope. So it lets you move on with your life, and it's respectful. So I actually like when schools do that very much. I have a couple, like 2 more questions here. And if any others, go ahead and bring them in, or we're going to start to wrap up here soonish. Carmela asked another part of the question, and this is a great one that I have seen change over the last decade or so. Are colleges, if you're going to like a college fair, perhaps, and I'm going to throw this to Madison here. If you're going to a college fair, you're sitting down at a table, you're talking to someone. Are you bringing in a digital portfolio to that situation? Are you bringing in old school style? We're going through a portfolio, physically, a book that we have assembled. What's pros, cons? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So brief overview of this, because there's a whole bunch of different kinds of portfolios and it depends a little bit on personal preference, but there's like physical portfolios where you can have physical copies of your work that you might bring to an in-person interview. And those can be really nice because you can hand them to a person. And if it's your actual artwork instead of a scan of an artwork, it can create more of a personal connection with the person who's viewing it. If it's an actual fabric sample that they can touch, that's a little bit nicer, of an experience than seeing it on a screen. However, there's some limitations to that. It can be hard to change or edit. It can be hard if you only have one copy of those things. So we do recommend having a digital portfolio that's in a PDF format, and then also that you can share, and you could print it out. I would say if you're doing an in-person interview, it depends on what department you're in and what kind of stuff you have. If you're a stage manager, your work might look better if it's nice and printed out instead of your original pieces of paper. You don't want all of your pencil marks and stuff to be smudged. But if you're an artist, it might be nice to have an original copy. I would probably recommend, you definitely want to have printouts of your resume so you can leave a resume with them. And if you can send them a digital version of your portfolio, or have a printed off one that doesn't have your originals in it, so you can leave it with them, so then they have that to reference when you're not physically there. I think some kind of combination of that would be the best way to handle that.
Incredible. Absolutely. I always enjoyed seeing when I was in person for these interviews, seeing the physical one, but also my next question would be like, can you also email this to me? Because otherwise I would be trying to photograph it and try to remember who it was from photographing, and then there's a glare with the photo. So it's very much appreciated by the person to have both if you can. I think my last question here is from Carrie, and it's specifically about Groundplan. So thank you for that. Recommended working with us to prep for interviews during junior or wait until senior year. I think the ideal time, most likely, is whatever time works best for your student's schedule. The nice thing about the program that we've designed at Groundplan is that it is on your own pace and time. Like, we quite literally had a student join who needed to revamp portfolio, resume, and do all the courses in the span of 9 days. And we did that just recently and got them to their interviews ready. We've also have students who are juniors who are working at a much slower pace. They're in tech for 3 shows. So every 3 weeks or so we hear from them, and then they are able to complete the next step. So it's very much on your own pace. Juniors need to start assembling these items. That's really setting yourself up for the best success. Really, in your junior year, you're really focusing on process shots. You're really focused on getting production shots, making sure your resume is up in order, and then we can start at any time. There are options. You'll go on Groundplan's website and you'll see you can book a consultation, and we can go from there. The other thing that I don't want to forget to mention is that we do have this exciting event in December. It's called the Groundplan Expo. You saw it in your email invite that you maybe got today. And it's a weekend, this virtual conference app called Remo. It's literally floors, you're assigned rooms. It's the coolest thing. UNCSA uses it for their virtual job fair, and I'm borrowing that idea for this event. It's really, really cool. We have a bunch of schools that are going to be present, Penn State being one of them. They're going to do classes. It's for all age high school students. Our seniors who are within our Ground Plan program are going to get to do college interviews there with UNCSA, CCM, Florida State's another school that's involved. Our juniors and younger are going to get to do a mock interview as a part of that process. And it all takes place right here from the comfort of your own room, wherever your computer screen is. So that's December 7th and 8th. It's called the Ground Plan Expo. That info is on our website as well. So yes, absolutely. Can you work with students over the summer who don't attend the Institute? Yes, absolutely. So there's actually two plans. There's a plan for our alums. As Adam can attest, our alums leave SSTI Tech, our in-person summer program that we've done, 18 summers. They leave there quite prepared for this process. So they really need less of a coursework than maybe a student who's never worked with us. So they have a plan that's the alumni plan that is like a brush up. It's a couple of series of reviews. And then there's also a full plan for students who've never attended an SSTI program and are going to start from day one with a course that is on the ins and outs of the portfolio and resume. It's basically what you saw tonight, but an hour long and lots of different examples. So that's how it starts for them. And the other thing is, if a student starts as a junior, they can come in and they can do a brush up. You can go on our website when you're a student and click add-ons. So if you do this the spring of your junior year and you're like, oh, in October of next year, I want to do a mock interview. You can go into your account, you can schedule a mock interview, and it pairs you with a staff member who you don't know for that mock interview experience. So you get to do it and brush up, and you can add those on anytime you want. Additional, like if you're the same way, if you wanted to add on a resume and portfolio session 6 months after you've completed the course, you can certainly do that as well. So those are the big highlights for Ground Plan. So Carrie, thank you for asking. And if we have no other questions, we have pretty much hit our goal of our time mark here. So I thank you all so very much for being here. This is going to be emailed out to folks who RSVP, so they have this link so you can reference it. It's also going to be, I think Maria's going to help me out and post it on the parent page, because I know there are a bunch of people who are asking for that. I thank Adam and Maria and Madison for joining me here tonight on this, and all of you at home for being here with us. So with that said, have a great evening, and thanks for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.